Embarrassing this entire family, my mother whispered, her fingers digging into my elbow like talons, as I grabbed my brother's drone out of the air and slammed it into the brick patio, saving my son from another second of being filmed like a circus animal. The drone cracked apart on the second hit, plastic pieces skittering into the rose bushes, but the sound was swallowed by the laughter that wouldn't stop. It was supposed to be my parents' 35th anniversary brunch. I had driven out to their place in Westchester at 6 in the morning to set up the catering, hang the string lights, arrange the white peonies my mother had specifically requested. I'd been working on the seating chart for 2 weeks. I had not been paying attention to what my younger brother was doing in the backyard. His name was Bryce. 28 years old, a self-described content creator who had been living rent-free in the pool house for almost 4 years and whose entire income came from a YouTube channel where he and his fiancée filmed prank videos. He had recently hit 500,000 subscribers. My parents bragged about this at every dinner party. They had stopped bragging about my career, which was a senior project manager at a logistics firm, somewhere around the time he hit 100,000. I heard the screaming first. Not crying, screaming, the kind of sound that comes out of a child when something is genuinely wrong, and any parent who has ever heard it knows the difference between that sound and a tantrum sound. I dropped the cake server on the kitchen counter and ran. What I saw when I came out the French doors made my brain short-circuit for a full second. My 8-year-old son, Holden, was standing in the middle of the lawn in his little navy blazer and bow tie, the outfit he had been so proud of that morning. He made me take 3 pictures of him in the bathroom mirror. He was holding both hands over his face. He was sobbing the way kids sob when they are trying to be brave and failing, and he was completely soaked in something that looked like dark green slime mixed with something gritty. Above him, Bryce's drone was circling at about head height, filming, and about 20 feet behind it, my brother was holding up the controller and laughing so hard he was bent at the waist. His fiancée Marlo had her phone up too, so did my cousin. So did my aunt, so did my mother. "What did you do?" I shouted. But nobody answered me because nobody could hear me over the laughter. I went to my son first. I dropped to my knees in front of him and pulled his hands away from his face, and the smell hit me. It was kitchen compost, old food scraps, eggshells, coffee grounds, rotting lettuce, and what I would later identify as fish sauce. My brother had rigged a 5-gallon bucket to the underside of the patio umbrella above the kids' table and pulled it with a fishing line when Holden sat down to eat his strawberries. The slime was mostly compost juice and food coloring. It was in his eyes, it was in his mouth, it was in his ears. "Sweetheart, look at me. Open your eyes. Can you open them?" "It burns, Mom. It burns, it burns, it burns." I pulled my cardigan off and tried to wipe his face with the inside of it, but my hands were shaking so badly I was making it worse. Behind me, the laughter had not stopped. It had actually gotten louder because now they were laughing at the part where I was panicking. "Oh my God, her face! Look at her face!" I heard Marlo say to her camera. "Auntie can't take a joke either, apparently." My mother walked over, her heels punched neat little holes in the wet grass. She did not bend down. She did not look at her grandson. She looked at me, and her mouth was a thin pink line. "Get up," she said. "You're making a scene." I stood up. I had to. My knees were shaking, and I had a strange ringing in my left ear. I stood up holding my son against my hip, and he was so wet that his weight was nothing compared to the smell coming off him. "He has compost in his eyes, Mom. There's vinegar in compost. There's bacteria in compost. It's biodegradable, Margot. Don't be hysterical." That was when I turned around and I saw the drone hovering about 4 feet from my son's face, the little red light blinking, the lens zooming in on his soaked eyelashes. And I felt something inside me, some old hinge that had been rusting for 30 years, simply give way. I grabbed the drone out of the air with both hands. The propellers cut my palm in 2 places. I didn't notice until later. I slammed it down onto the patio bricks once and the plastic dome cracked. I slammed it down again and a propeller flew off. I slammed it down a 3rd time and the camera lens broke into 3 pieces. Bryce screamed like I had hit him. Not like I had broken his toy, like I had hit him. "You piece psycho, that's a $1,200 drone. That's my equipment. Are you insane?" I straightened up. I was still holding the broken plastic in my left hand. I could feel the blood on my palm now. Holden was clinging to my leg, his face pressed against my hip bone. You poured garbage on a child. It's a prank. It's content. You just destroyed my upload. You owe me $1,200 right now, you crazy bitch. I looked around. Aunts, uncles, cousins. My father in the patio doorway with a champagne flute in his hand, looking irritated. My mother with her arms folded across her cream silk blouse. Marlo still filming. My cousin Tessa still filming. Nobody was moving toward Holden. Nobody had brought a towel. Nobody had asked him if he was okay. I waited. I genuinely waited. I gave them maybe 5 full seconds to be human beings, and not a single one of them was. Margot, my father finally said, the way he says my name when I'm about to be lectured. You apologize to your brother and you pay for that drone. Then you go in the kitchen and you clean yourself up and we finish brunch like adults. Stop ruining your mother's day. I looked at him. I looked at my mother. I looked at Bryce, who was already on his phone, probably calling his subscribers crying. Apologize, my mother said. Now. And if you ever want to be welcomed in this house again, you'll write him a check before you leave. I looked down at Holden. He was not looking at any of them. He had his forehead pressed against my hip and his eyes squeezed shut. He was a kid who had spent the entire morning wanting to be a big boy at the grown-up table. He had taken 3 pictures in the mirror. Fine, I said. My voice did not sound like my voice. I'll write a check. I think my mother thought she had won because she made a little satisfied sound. I picked Holden up, all 63 pounds of him soaked in compost, and I walked. I walked past my father in the doorway. I walked through the kitchen where the brunch I had prepared was waiting on the island. I walked out the front door and down the bluestone path to the driveway. Bryce was yelling something behind me. I think Marlo was filming the back of my head. I don't know. I had stopped hearing them. I buckled my son into his booster seat. There were chunks of eggshell in his hair. He didn't say anything. He didn't cry. He just looked out the window the way adults look out windows when they're trying not to cry in front of someone. I drove to the urgent care on Route 9. I did not drive home. I did not drive to a gas station. I drove straight to urgent care because my best friend from college is a pediatrician, and the first thing she ever told me, back when Holden was a newborn and I was a wreck, was that compost in a child's eyes is a real medical issue, not a metaphorical one. Bacteria from raw meat scraps. Mold spores. Vinegar acidity. She had told me this in the context of why she didn't keep a compost bin under her sink. I told the receptionist what had happened. The whole thing. I said the words. My brother poured a 5-gallon bucket of kitchen compost on my child as a YouTube prank and watched her face do something complicated. The PA who saw us was a woman maybe my age, with a long brown braid and a name tag that said Dr. Halloran. She irrigated Holden's eyes for 20 minutes. She took swabs. She took photographs of his face, his ears, the inside of his ear canal, the inside of his mouth. She typed everything into a tablet. She asked Holden questions in a soft voice, and Holden answered them in a softer voice. Was this on purpose, buddy? He said it would be funny. Did you want him to do it? I said no. I said no a lot of times. Auntie Marlo told me to sit down. I had not known that. I had not known he asked them to stop. I had not known that Marlo, my future sister-in-law, had encouraged him to sit at the table where the bucket was rigged. Dr. Halloran handed me a printed form on the way out. It was a mandated reporter form. She told me, gently, that she was required by law to file a report with Child Protective Services anytime there was a credible incident of a child being intentionally harmed by a family member, and that this qualified. She told me this was not a punishment. She told me this would create a paper trail that would protect Holden. She gave me copies of everything, the photographs, the swab results, the incident summary. She also gave me the non-emergency police number and said, very quietly, that if I wanted to file a report, the photographs in her file would be admissible. I nodded. I think I said thank you. I think I tipped her, which is a thing you cannot do at urgent care, but I tried. In the parking lot, I sat in the driver's seat with the keys in my lap and I called the non-emergency police number. I gave them the address of my parents' house. I told them what had happened. I gave them the urgent care report number. The dispatcher said an officer would come by to take a statement at my home that evening if I wanted, or I could come to the precinct. I said I would come to the precinct in the morning. Then I drove home. Holden fell asleep in the booster seat with the smell of fish sauce in his hair and an ice pack on his cheek. My apartment is a 2-bedroom in Yonkers, 3rd floor walk-up, north facing, so it's always a little dark. I love it. I have lived there for 11 years. I bathed Holden twice, washed his hair 4 times, threw away the navy blazer because the compost juice had stained it black-green and he never wanted to see it again anyway. I put him in his dinosaur pajamas and made him toast with peanut butter and honey, which is his sick food, and let him eat it on the couch in front of the TV, which I never do. My phone on the kitchen counter had been buzzing for 2 hours, 43 text messages, 11 voicemails, 14 missed calls. I scrolled. Mom, get back here right now and apologize. You are humiliating us. Mom, your Aunt Phoebe is in tears. Your father has a migraine. Mom, Bryce says the drone is $1,200 plus the lost ad revenue. He's saying $1,500 total. Venmo him by tonight. Dad, this is unacceptable behavior from a grown woman. Call your brother and make this right. Bryce, yo. That drone was a gift from my sponsor. You literally just destroyed a brand deal. $1,500 or I'm suing. Marlo, I posted the video. You looked unhinged. Hope it was worth it. And Phoebe, sweetheart, I know you were upset, but family is family. Just apologize. I opened Instagram. Marlo had posted a reel. It was 38 seconds long, clipped beautifully with text overlays and a trending sound. It started with me grabbing the drone out of the air and ended with me walking away from my mother. It did not include the part where Holden was screaming. It did not include the bucket. It did not include the bucket. It did not include my brother laughing. The caption, when your sister-in-law literally assaults you at a family party because she can't take a joke. Mental illness is real. Please get help. Quentra's number toxic. Number unhinged. It had 18,000 views. The comments were a sewer. My mother had liked it. My father had liked it. My father had liked it. My cousin Tessa had commented, she's always been like this. Shh. Ah, yay. My Aunt Phoebe had not liked it, which was something. I sat down on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets and I made myself breathe. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. The thing they teach you in therapy. I did it 6 times. Then I stood up and I went to the closet in the hallway where I keep my filing box, the one with the rubber lid that I bought at the Container Store the year I bought my first car. I pulled it down. I sat on the rug in the hallway with my legs crossed and I started looking for one specific folder. 5.5 years ago, my parents had a problem. My father had invested almost everything he had in a friend's restaurant chain in upstate New York that was supposed to be a sure thing. It was not a sure thing. The restaurants closed inside of 18 months and he lost the principal plus the second mortgage he had taken out against the Westchester house to fund his share. My mother, who had been telling people for years that she would never live in a house with less than 4 bedrooms, was about to live in a house with no bedrooms at all. I was the only one in the family with good credit. I had spent my 20s paying off student loans and working 2 jobs and saving the down payment money my grandmother had left me in a high-yield account. I was 31 years old, divorced for 2 years, raising a 3-year-old, and I had exactly enough credit and cash to do one thing. They came to my apartment. Both of them. They sat on my IKEA couch and my mother held my hands and cried, which she had not done at my wedding or at my divorce. She told me she could not survive the shame of the neighborhood watching them downsize. She told me they would change. She told me she would be a real grandmother to Holden. She would respect me. She would never make me feel small again if I would just buy the house and let them stay in it. So I did. I bought the house in my name. I used the inheritance for the down payment. I took out the mortgage. We signed a 5-year lease where they paid me a rent that just barely covered the mortgage payment, with the understanding, the lawyer said, that we would renegotiate when the lease ran out. That had been June of 2020. I had not thought about the lease in years. They paid the rent like clockwork on the 1st of every month, auto pay from my father's account. The mortgage was on auto pay from mine. The arrangement ran itself. I found the folder. I pulled out the lease. I sat there on the hallway rug under a flickering overhead light at almost 10 at night, and I read. The lease was for 5 years, term beginning June 1, 2020, term ending June 1, 2020. I term ending June 1, 2020. I looked at the wall calendar in the kitchen. It was August 23rd, 2025. The lease had expired almost 3 months ago. Nobody had said anything. Nobody had asked to renew it. The rent had just kept coming in. The clause I was looking for was on page 7. Upon expiration of the term, if no written renewal has been executed, the tenancy shall convert to a month-to-month at-will tenancy, terminable by the landlord with 30 days written notice. In the event of material breach, including but not limited to use of the premises for harassment, defamation, or other tortious conduct against the landlord may serve a notice to quit with an accelerated timeline as permitted by New York state law. I read it twice. I read it 3 times. I read it a 4th time out loud, very quietly, so I would not wake Holden. I went to the kitchen and I made myself a cup of tea. I drank half of it. I dumped the rest in the sink and poured myself a glass of wine instead. I sat at my kitchen table and I started a list on the back of a Trader Joe's receipt. 1. Realtor. Cash sale. As is. 2. Lawyer. Notice to quit. Material breach via defamation. 3. Block auto pay. Both directions. 4. Police report. 9 a.m. 5. Screenshot Marlowe's reel. Notarize. 6. CPS file number. Get from urgent care in morning. At 10:30, my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it ring. The voicemail came in immediately. Margot, listen to me. The video is at 24,000 now. Marla says it's going to hit 100,000 by morning. You are going to lose your job. You are going to lose everything. I can stop this. I can make her take it down. All you have to do is record a video apology, send it to Bryce, transfer the $1,500, and come over here Sunday for dinner like a normal daughter. If you do this, we forget the whole thing. If you don't, you are dead to us. You will never see this family again. You will not be at Christmas. You will not be at your father's 70th. You will not inherit a single thing from us. Do you understand me? Not a single thing. Call me back tonight. I sat there at the kitchen table and I listened to my mother offer me the family I had been begging for my entire life in exchange for putting my son back into the hands of the people who had laughed while he screamed. I deleted the voicemail. I drank the wine. At 6 the next morning, I called the realtor I had used 11 years ago, a woman named Devora, who had switched to investor-focused sales somewhere around 2018. I told her I had a 4-bedroom colonial in Westchester. I needed to move fast, as is, no inspection, ideally to a developer. She asked me about tenants. I told her the tenants had no current lease and would be vacating per a notice to quit. She told me she had 2 cash buyers who would close in 15 days. At 7, I called the bank and stopped the auto pay from my father's account. I did not want to be receiving rent. Accepting payment after a lease expires can be argued as implicit renewal. I had read about this online at 4 in the morning. At 8, I called a real estate attorney in White Plains. She had a cancellation at 10:30. At 9, Holden and I walked into the precinct in Yonkers. I gave my statement. I handed over the urgent care report. I gave them Marlowe's Instagram handle and the URL of the reel. The officer who took my statement was a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain. She read everything twice. She asked Holden a few gentle questions. She told me she would be referring the case to the Westchester precinct that had jurisdiction over my parents' address, and that I would hear from a detective within 48 hours about charges, possibly endangerment of a child, possibly harassment. Possibly more depending on what the prosecutor wanted to file. She told me to keep everything, every text, every voicemail, every screenshot. At 10:30, I sat in the lawyer's office and we drafted a 30-day notice to quit. We also drafted a cease and desist letter to Marlowe and Bryce regarding the Instagram reel, citing defamation and the unauthorized commercial use of my likeness. The lawyer also took down the information for a restraining order petition and said she would file it that afternoon. At 2, I hired a process server. At 3, I had the locks at the Westchester house scheduled to be changed on September 23rd, the day after the eviction deadline. At 4, my phone, which I had on Do Not Disturb, lit up with my father's name. I let it go to voicemail. Then my mother. Then Bryce. Then my Aunt Phoebe, who I actually almost picked up for and then didn't. I went and picked up Holden from my friend Daphne's apartment, where he had spent the morning watching cartoons with her twins. He looked okay. He was a little quieter than usual. He asked me in the car if he was going to have to see Uncle Bryce again. I said no. He said okay and looked out the window. 2 days later, the process server delivered the notice to quit at 9:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I had asked him to text me when it was done. My phone exploded at 9:48, 11 calls in the first 3 minutes. I did not pick up. I was at work. I sat at my desk and looked at the spreadsheet for a shipment of medical supplies headed to a hospital in Cleveland, and I felt something I had not felt in almost a decade, which was a complete absence of guilt. The space where the guilt usually lived was just quiet. It was a good quiet. At lunch, I listened to one voicemail, just one. It was my father. His voice was small. He sounded confused, the way old men sound when something is happening to them that they don't understand. Margot, honey, there was a man here. He gave us this paper. It says the house is going on the market. It says we have 30 days. Honey, this can't be right. This is our house. Call us back. I did not call back. I sent one group text. To my mother, my father, and my brother. You told me I was ruining the party. You told me I was dead to you. You told me to write a check. I am writing nothing. The house is being sold. You have 30 days. The locks change September 23rd. All communication going forward is through my attorney, contact information attached. Marlo has been served a cease and desist regarding the reel. The police are aware of the incident on the 22nd. A restraining order petition has been filed. Do not contact me, Holden, or anyone at my place of employment. Then, I blocked all 3 numbers. The next 30 days were quiet for me and very loud for them. I changed my number. My lawyer fielded approximately 47 communications from them, including 2 from a lawyer my father had hired who very quickly figured out his clients had no legal standing. Marlo took the reel down within 6 hours of receiving the cease and desist. Bryce posted a long, rambling video to his channel about being canceled by his own sister that lost him about 8,000 subscribers in the first week, and then a sponsor, a detective from the Westchester precinct, called me. She was kind. She told me that the DA was reviewing the case and that given the photographs from urgent care and the video evidence on Marlo's own Instagram, they were considering charges of reckless endangerment and harassment. She told me Holden would not need to testify. She told me she had 3 kids and that she was sorry this had happened to mine. CPS filed their report. It was on paper somewhere now, forever. If my brother ever wanted to be alone with a child again, that report would exist. Devora sold the house in 4 days to a developer who was planning to gut it and put up a duplex. I made enough on the sale after paying off the mortgage to put 20% down on a small house in a town 2 counties north in a school district where nobody had ever heard of my brother's YouTube channel. On the last day, the day before the closing, I drove past the Westchester house in the afternoon. I parked half a block down. I didn't go in. I had no reason to go in. A small U-Haul was in the driveway, not big enough. My father was outside in a sweater I didn't recognize, loading boxes into the back of it slowly, the way he moves now, the way I had stopped noticing he moved. Bryce was sitting on the front steps with his head in his hands. Marlo was nowhere. I had heard, through a cousin who had not blocked me, that she had moved back in with her parents in New Jersey within a week of the reel coming down. My mother was standing in the middle of the lawn screaming at no one. Just at the air, her arms were crossed. I sat in my car and I watched for maybe 2 minutes. There was a part of me, an old part, the part that had cried in the driveway the night of my high school graduation when she told me my dress was unflattering, that wanted to get out of the car and go help my father with the boxes. He was old. He was going to throw his back out. He had not done anything, exactly. He had just stood in doorways for 35 years and let things happen. I did not get out of the car. I looked in my rearview mirror. Holden was in the back, reading the book about the boy who finds a dragon under his bed. He was humming. He had a little smudge of strawberry jam on his chin from breakfast that he had not let me wipe off because he liked the way it tasted later. He felt me looking and met my eyes in the mirror. "Are we going to the new house today, Mom?" I put the car in drive. "Yeah, baby." "We're going home." I pulled away from the curb and I drove north on the parkway, and I did not look back, not once, not even in the mirror. They had wanted a show. They had wanted content. They had wanted a daughter who would write the check and come back Sunday for the brunch they had already ruined. What they got was a 30-day notice and a quiet morning in a U-Haul that wasn't big enough. And I got a kid in the backseat with jam on his chin, humming a song to himself, on the way to a house with his name on the second bedroom door. I think about that morning on the patio more often than I want to admit. Not the part where I smashed the drone. The part right before it, when I stood there for 5 seconds and waited for one of them to be a human being. My mother, my father, my brother, my aunts. I gave them 5 seconds to walk over to my son and ask him if his eyes hurt. Not a single one of them did, and I understand now that those 5 seconds had been a 30-year experiment with the same result every single time, and I had just kept running it because I wanted the answer to be different. The thing nobody tells you about cruel families is that they do not become cruel in one afternoon. They become cruel in the small moments over decades while you are telling yourself it isn't that bad. My mother did not wake up the day of the brunch and decide to laugh at her grandchild. She had been laughing at me, at small versions of me, since I was Holden's age. And every time I let it go, every time I drove home and told myself she didn't mean it, I was teaching her that the price of hurting me was 0. When you charge a person nothing for hurting you, they will hurt the people you love next. That is not a moral judgment. That is just what happens. I bought my parents that house because I wanted them to love me. I understand that now. I dressed it up as obligation and family duty, but underneath it, I was 31 years old and still waiting for my mother to look at me with the soft look she gave Bryce. The house was a bribe, and the thing about bribes is that they don't work. They just make the person you are bribing more contemptuous of you. My mother despised me a little more every year that I paid her mortgage, because every payment confirmed for her that I would do anything to be loved, and a person who will do anything to be loved is not someone you respect. What I want my son to learn from this, when he is old enough to ask, is that walking away from people who hurt you is not the same as failing to love them. It is the most loving thing you can do, because the alternative is teaching them that hurting you works. I was kind to my family for 30 years, and they got crueler. I was cold to my family for 30 days, and they got quiet. Kindness without limits is not kindness. It is fuel. I have a small house now in a town where nobody knows my brother's channel. Holden has the bedroom on the right at the top of the stairs. He has a desk and a rug shaped like a dinosaur and a window that faces the maple tree. Sometimes he asks about his grandparents and I tell him the truth in a quiet, age-appropriate way. He nods and goes back to his book. He's going to be okay. Both of us are. It just took me realizing that some doors are not meant to be walked through twice, and the courage to be the one who finally closes them.